I'm Matt Valley. Welcome to episode number 149 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the insights and analytics pros that you trust. Hey, I've got an old friend with me here today. I'm sure many of you know who he is. I'm excited to have Bill Salokar on the program today. Now, real quickly, how do I know Bill Salokar? Well, I've known him a very long time. If you've been around this industry for some time, you might recognize the acronym NFO. That's where we met once upon a time. We overlapped at NFO, and the thing that really stuck out with me about Bill was that he had a background in statistics, as do I. So he was certainly no empty suit. I loved the fact that he could really go deep on research. So I always had a lot of respect for that. So super cool. Fast forward to today, Bill has worked for a lot of great companies, but he's also volunteered his time with a lot of great organizations like MRxPros currently, Insights Association, Intellus Worldwide. He's been involved in for a long time. All good stuff, but he has just started a new role as Director of Business Development at a company that you may have heard of called Gazelle Global, who's one of the best and most trusted in the business when it comes to qualitative and quantitative research operations support. All of that, and hey, look behind his right ear and you see this crazy horn. We're
Yep.
going to be talking music, but not the music I usually talk about. Bill has had experience with all kinds of crazy instruments over the years. So we're going to get into all of that and more on today's podcast. So welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you so much, Matt. It is great to be here. And as you said, we have known each other for a long time. And I'll say it's about time I got to come on here. I'm really excited about it. I've been a long-term fan of the podcast, and I've learned so much about people that I know. And you always
Yeah.
hear and learn something new about folks, and it's really great. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to have you. I'm also very happy that we have stayed in touch over the years. So it's
Yes.
been a long time. We've run into each other in conferences consistently over the years, and so it's great to sit down and actually talk about the personal side of Bill and some really fun stuff. I do want
Yeah,
to say
and I
one
will
thing.
say, yeah, one of the things that I really value about you, and I think this is something that I try to embody, is never let a relationship get cold. And in our
Sure.
industry and in other industries, relationships and networks are so important and so critical. And I really put a lot of value on that. And I guess that's part of why we're here today.
Yeah, cool, cool. Just one note on a personal side, I'm wearing the shirt John Falvo and the daggers and his daggers. I'm undertaking a music project here in Dallas where John Falvo has asked me to record some songs for him. It's kind of like a dark Johnny Cash country kind of thing, and it's really fun. So I'm repping the team here today. So anyway, we're here to talk about Bill. So let's get started, Bill. You've really been in this industry for quite some time.
Right.
How did you first get started in this space, and take us on a little bit of a journey of your career?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things I like to say, especially for younger colleagues, is, I've been doing this since the 1900s, and it's true. I started my career right out of Florida State, where I had an undergraduate in math and a graduate degree in statistics. I love
Yeah.
Tallahassee, so I didn't want to move out of Tallahassee, but Tallahassee is kind of a one industry town, and that industry is state government. So I found a job working for the state of Florida, first in the court system for a while and then in the governor's office. In the governor's office, I was doing forecasting. So I was being able to apply my statistical education,
Sure.
forecasting demographics, variety of state income sources, revenue sources. One of those was in Florida, there was a big industry in parimutuel wagering. So it was horse racing, dog racing, high lie, and that was a tax
Okay.
source. So that was one of the tax sources I was responsible for forecasting. And then around 1987, Florida put a constitutional amendment on its ballot to uh, create a Florida lottery. It
Ah,
passed
okay.
overwhelmingly. And so the Florida Lottery was born as another state agency. And because it was sort of in that gambling realm, they asked me to do a forecast for how much money the lottery would bring in. That introduced me to a team of folks that ultimately went and became the startup team for the Florida Lottery. And about a
Okay.
year later, they recruited me to come join them. And I joined in the finance department, where I was still doing forecasting and a variety of other kind of odd jobs, statistically oriented. And after about a year, I got to know folks there, including folks in marketing. And they said, "Hey, Bill, we would like you to consider moving over into marketing in a market research analyst role." And for
Yeah.
me, market research was a term I had heard, but I had no familiarity with it. But it sounded really exciting, and it sounded like something new and different to do. So I took advantage of that and ended up becoming a research analyst. Kind of learned on the job, became the research manager, and a few years later, the Georgia Lottery in 1993 was created, and the former head of the Florida Lottery was appointed as the new president of the Georgia Lottery Corporation. And she
Ah,
invited me to come up to Atlanta, Georgia, and be part of the
cool.
Georgia Lottery startup team. And I did that. And that moved me to Atlanta here in 1993. And so for a total of 10 years, I was a lottery research expert. And
Yeah.
and that was fun and exciting for a while. But the lottery business is also very niche. And I wanted to do more with research than just spend my whole career focused on lotteries. And so I had
Right.
an opportunity to move to the supplier side. And except for a short stint at American Cancer Society, I've been at a number of suppliers, Elric and Lavage, NFO that you mentioned, both are now part of Kantar. I was at Harris Interactive, Buzzback, CMI. Spent 10 years at Skim, and just
Yeah.
recently moved over to Gazelle Global. So it's been a great career. I'm so glad I took that opportunity to move out of finance and into marketing. I've never looked back, and just so grateful that I was at the right place to make that move. And so, like a lot of research professionals, I never intended to get into research from the get go. In fact, I knew
Sure.
so little about it, especially being in
Yeah.
a place like Tallahassee where there's not a lot of big corporations. So anyway, that's how I ended up here today.
Yeah, that's a very serendipitous path. That's very interesting. Super cool. And I know a lot of people, a lot of these listeners here would know you from Skim. So tell
Yep.
me a little bit about what attracted you to Gazelle.
Yeah. So I'm getting, I won't say I'm at the end of my career, but I am looking at kind of, you know, winding down to some degree. And
Mhm.
the opportunity at Gazelle is something that is, I'm working part time. So I have a shortened work week, which gives me a lot of flexibility. I had begun doing that at Skim, but I've got a little bit more flexibility here at Gazelle. The other thing is, I've spent a lot of time working with Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies, and it's been
Mhm.
great. I've loved it. Going to Gazelle, the folks that I am working with now are consultants, smaller research agencies. To some degree, it
Sure.
may be some corporations that are looking for help in their operations. But I'm really focused now on helping people in the operational side of research. And I think where we are today in the industry, I think it's really critical to have a really strong team of folks that know how to do the operational side of research. There's so much emphasis on quality of respondents, on the quality of the surveys that we do. It gives me an opportunity to be refocused on those kind of fundamental areas of doing a good research project. And selfishly, it gives me an opportunity to partner with a lot of folks that I have met over the years that are now in
Yeah.
these different roles. They're in the role of a consultant. They're in the role, they're in a smaller agency. And it's just a different vibe. And I'm really I'm only a little over a month into it, but I'm really liking it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, great. That's great to hear. And you certainly have plenty of experience, so a good person to call if you're looking for those services. Now, that horn that's just behind your right ear, when I saw that, I thought, I think that's a French horn, but I was wrong. And that
Close.
opened up this conversation about all these crazy instruments. So I don't know where you want to start, but it's a great story.
Okay. Well, I'll start because, like you said, behind me is a baritone horn or euphonium, it's also called. And I'll tell you the story about that. But also, the other thing you'll notice up there behind me is an old Crosley radio. So that
Yeah.
radio belonged to my grandmother and it was on her bed table. And it still works. It's a little scratchy, but ever since I was a little kid, I enjoyed listening to music. And whether it was on the radio, AM radio back in the day, I was always into music. And at about fourth grade, I was going to a parochial school and they had a band, and you could begin playing in the band in fourth grade, which is kind of young. And I
Yeah.
took up trumpet, and I was a trumpet player from fourth grade all the way to eighth grade. And then I skipped a year because I went to an all boys Catholic school that didn't have a band. I missed it. I ended up going to public school the next year, South Miami High. We had a great marching band, great band director, and I was still a trumpet player, but I had had braces. And he'd seen a lot of kids, I guess, playing instruments. And he looked at me and he said, your lips are just not perfectly designed to play trumpet. And I think you would be better playing low brass, a low brass instrument. And the baritone or euphonium has the same fingering as a trumpet. So if you
Right.
play in the treble clef, you are actually just playing the same notes, but just with a different range. So it's an easy transition. And so I took up playing
Yeah.
baritone when I was a sophomore in high school, and I just took to it. I was, again, I guess my lips were designed for a baritone horn, and I got pretty good at it. In fact, in my senior year, I was in the All Miami-Dade County Symphonic Band, which was quite an
Wow.
honor. So that
That's
was
impressive.
fun. And the other thing cool about high school was I had come into high school in a big high school where I did not know a lot of folks, and I joined marching band, and that became my friend group for the most part. And when I was
Sure.
at the end of my junior year, we had tryouts for drum major, and so I decided I would try out. Why not? And I ended up getting selected. So my senior year, I was a drum major, one of two drum majors for our marching band. And suddenly I went from like obscure nobody to somebody who everybody knows because I'm out there leading the band at the football games. And you become, I wouldn't say a celebrity, but you're a lot better known in high school when you've got that kind of role. So that was really, really fun to do. I really loved it. And and so it was a great opportunity to as a young person get into a leadership role, if you will.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
And so I ended up playing baritone my freshman year at University of Miami, and then I transferred
Oh,
to
okay.
Florida. Yeah, I transferred to Florida State, and at that point in time, I was banded out. I decided I was going
Yeah.
to just take a break from band. I sometimes look back and regret that I didn't stay with it, but I made that decision. And
They're really known for their marching band, aren't they? Florida State?
Florida State has one of the premier marching bands. Yeah, so I go
Yeah.
to football games today and go, I could have been there because they love low brass players. They're hard to find. So,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, I still love music, and I had picked up playing recorder. And so a lot of people play recorder when they're like little kids, but I had gotten a wooden recorder. I took some lessons uh, when I was at Miami, and then I moved up to Florida State, and I learned that they had a Renaissance music group called the Consort of Sorts. And so I
Ah,
joined that.
okay.
And for a couple of years, I played with this group, and I played recorder, and I also picked up an instrument called the crumhorn, which is a
The
Renaissance
crumhorn.
crumhorn. It's the precursor of the oboe. So it has a double reed, but the double reed is embedded in the mouthpiece. So it's easier to play, and the fingering is
Okay.
just like a recorder. Yeah. But it
Okay.
sounds kind of like a duck. Yeah. So. but we played at some festivals, things like that. So I did that for a while, and then kind of got out of playing music for a good long time. And then I moved to Atlanta in '93 from Tallahassee. I joined a church that had a handbell group, and I can't remember the exact year I joined it, but I knew some of the people in it, and I was kind of fascinated by handbells. There's a very different way of playing music because you only play certain notes that are the bells that you are responsible for. So I became the bass
These are
bell
the
player.
ones where these are the ones where you have them lined up, right?
Yeah,
And you pick up the correct one at the
right.
right time. Okay.
Yeah. So I was playing the low bass bell. So I had the real big bell. So I had like C to G. And so if there's a C, I picked up that bell, dong, and luckily you have a lot of half notes and whole notes, if you
Mhm.
know what that is in music. But the smaller bells they're playing, very fast. But the bass bells you get to play a little slower. But it was always a good workout too. But I had a lot of fun doing that. Did that for a number of years, and then changed churches. I guess back in 2008, and so I have the church I'm at now doesn't have a handbell group, so I gave up playing handbells. But I did. I had a friend who had a recording studio in here in Atlanta, and he recorded our handbell group and some other groups from the church music group. So I am now officially a recording artist. There is a CD where,
A handbell recording artist.
yes,
Wow.
yep.
So so no guitar for you. It was recorder, crumhorn, handbells, whatever. It's
I,
just a
I
very
Yeah,
interesting
I did
collection.
have a bass guitar for a few years, and I played a little bit of bass guitar, but I never got really good at it. And yeah, I
Yeah.
gave that up somewhere in college. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I love the fact that music has been consistently part of your life. Lots of
Yeah.
different instruments, but it's always been there in one form or another. So I'm interested to know, is this is learning musical instruments and playing with a group, is it a completely distinct discipline from career and insights, or is there something you learned from one that you applied to the other?
Yeah. Just before I get to that, just one quick note on the horn behind me.
Yeah.
About a couple months ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about just like we're talking about what instruments we played. And I said I played baritone when I was a younger guy, and he said I love to shop at thrift stores. I bought several musical instruments, and I have a baritone horn. He said, but I can't play it. He said, do you want it? And I said, sure. So and for lack of, it doesn't have a case. So for lack of a better place to put it, I put it here, which it's actually on top of an African drum that belongs to my son, but it's been a great conversation starter. I did pick it up when he gave it to me, and I can still play the Star Spangled Banner, which I know by heart, but I kind of sound like probably a fifth grade, middle school playing kind of, or yeah, fifth grade, middle school, something like that. I have a lot of work to do. But speaking of that's a good segue into answering your question. I think, I've always looked at them separately, but I also think there's a lot you can learn from one to the other.
Sure.
Music it's a discipline, and you get better by putting in the effort and putting in the practice. And you do things like playing scales, which are boring to play, but they're developing
Yep.
a skill. And by doing that, then you can see a piece of music and be able to play it well. I think the same thing is true in insights. You have to build on a foundation. You can't just come
Mhm.
in and expect to be successful if you haven't put in the hard work. And I think for me, the biggest thing I've learned is, I've moved in my career from being a statistician, um, very introverted person, to being an outgoing business developer. And it didn't
Sure.
happen because I just said, hey, I want to do this. I actually had to put in the work to do this. I had to go to some conferences early on where I felt really awkward and didn't know how to create a conversation. But I stuck with it. I practiced, and I would use that same discipline in my personal life. And so being able to create a conversation, create a relationship, it's a discipline that's built on a lot of practice. And so you get good at it by practice and continuing to practice it. And so, that's that's partly why I think I can say I'm a successful business developer. I know how to create, nurture, keep relationships, but it's built on that foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Cool. So um, you, as you said, you've been in this space for a long time. I'm curious to know from your perspective as you look forward. I know AI is like the topic on everybody's mind, but as you look to the future of this insight space, what do you see?
Yeah. I think right now what I see mostly is uncertainty. I see disruption and uh,
Yeah.
a lot of people just trying to figure out where are we going and how are we getting there. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm optimistic from talking to a lot of folks that there is still this core idea that the human element is still very important in what we do, and AI is going to help us do our jobs better, but it's not going to completely replace the idea of a human-centered industry. And ultimately, if we're going to help companies make good decisions, we have to know what people think. And and so AI, I think, can help us get there more efficiently, but it can't replace that. And it's interesting going to conferences. Oftentimes, you'll get into a session, and the speaker will say, "There's no AI involved in this presentation or discussion," and you'll hear people clap. And so I think there's this sense of, yeah, AI is great. I want to learn all about that, but I still like the idea that some things are achieved without that and are important without that. But I would think if I were like a young researcher, I'd really be looking at trying to understand what is the real nature of our industry. What is we use this term jobs to be done in a lot of research projects, and a lot of a lot of our clients talk about jobs to be done. I think we as an industry have to really focus on, and again, if I were a younger person in this industry, what is the job to be done with insights, and really focus on that,
Mhm.
because I think we can easily become like these classical examples of the carburetor manufacturer. It's like, yeah, nobody needs a carburetor on a, probably a lot of our listeners may not even know what a carburetor is, but a carburetor helped mix air and gas to power an engine. Well, that got replaced. The engine didn't get replaced. Well, I guess you could say it's maybe in the process of being replaced, but then you have to go a step farther. Well, the real job is not to mix air and gas. The real job is to get a person from place A to place B. And so
Right.
we have to kind of think about it from that bigger perspective of what is it we're trying to achieve in this industry, and what's the best way to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great point, and it's always interesting to think about the fact that we often don't take our own medicine in this industry, right? We've got all these great tools and frameworks and
Yeah.
ideas, and we think about things, and sometimes we just need to turn inward
Yeah.
and utilize those same tools to kind of understand where we're headed and what we should be doing. So it's a
Yeah.
great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. So Bill, this is media. The media landscape has changed so much.
Yes.
Podcasts have become a deal. Interested to know as you think about that media landscape, what do you turn to for insight, inspiration, enjoyment? Big broad question. What's your media diet?
Sure. Yeah. So again, I'll go back. Historically, I was always a rock and roll music lover. Despite the fact that I never played rock and roll, I listened to a lot of
Giving your
rock and roll.
hand to the last question.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll get there. Yeah, and so I used to have a huge album. I don't know, it's all relative, but I had 300 to 400 albums at one point in time. And over years, I kind of culled that down. I still have maybe about 100 or so left, but I still love listening to music, and I'm a big fan of Spotify. So Spotify just I gravitated to it. I know there's a lot of other choices out there, but they do this wrap up every year, and I've been the last few years in the top like 1 or 2% of listeners. I listen to it that much, and so I listen to a lot of rock and roll groups that I grew up with, that I loved in earlier parts of my life. I still love. I got into jazz, I got into country. But then also, I like that Spotify allows me to listen to podcasts. So I can get lots of podcasts that's included and listen on Spotify. So I have a number of podcasts that I listen to regularly. One of my favorites is one called Ologies by Ali Ward. If you don't know that one, I would say look it up. She's always looking at different uh, scientific disciplines. And so the
Sure.
ology, maybe it may be about walruses, it might be about trees, and it's fascinating. And she's got short versions called smologies if you want something that's
Ah,
a little shorter. She does a great job. I've learned so much just listening to ologies. Uh, and then I have found another one that I really like recently called Boring History. And it's something to put on to go to sleep to. And it's fascinating stories about history told in a very calm way that will lull you to sleep. So uh,
very
but yeah, I like so in terms of music and podcasts, that's one of the areas I spend a lot of time in. The other one for me is old movies. Back during the pandemic, I was alone a lot. My wife had to travel to take care of her mom, so I spent a lot of time by myself. And I found watching old movies like on Turner Classic Movies and other places was just it was like comfort food for viewing. And and I found that the more I got into old movies, the more I appreciated the storytelling nature of them. So I'll give you a quick contrast. In a lot of movies today, there's this feeling of I got to hook you in the first couple of minutes to get you to watch. A
yeah,
lot of old movies, they're slow burns. You watch and
yeah.
the story just slowly develops. But by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, what a great story. What a great movie. And so I really have become a big fan of that. And for me, it's very relaxing. It's also a way to, kind of think about how culture has changed, all those kind of things. So I really have gotten into that.
Yeah, yeah, very nice. It's funny you mentioned Spotify and Spotify Wrapped because my daughter is 21. She just turned 21, and we share a Spotify account.
Yeah.
And so the end of the year Wrapped is something very unsatisfying for her because, it says something about you. It's like you want to
Yes.
show all your friends, here's my Wrapped. And
Right.
then I've got these spoilers in her Wrapped, and she doesn't want to share it with her friends.
Right.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, Let me ask you one question because about the old movies. Is there one, if you were to choose one that is a recommendation that was surprising that wow, that you might want to share with listeners?
Yeah, I would say so. I love Western. I love a lot of them, but Westerns is probably my favorite genre. The Searchers by John Wayne, with John Wayne. If you're used to
Searchers.
thinking about John Wayne as being sort of the good guy, watch The
Yeah.
Searchers. Uh, it's a different John Wayne that you see in that, and the cinematography is fantastic. The story is great. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of the top ones from my perspective. Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So you talked about your love for rock and roll. I, of course, share that love. And you know the question that's coming, Bill. It's the
Yes.
one that I really. So you are stranded on a desert island. You have three albums of your choosing to keep you company for the rest of your days. What are those albums?
Okay. Yeah, I had to think about that a lot. So I'm glad you gave me that question up front. First one, Bob Dylan's "Blood on the Tracks." It's an
Ah,
album that
very
I
interesting.
have loved for a long time. It's an album that is uplifting, but also really talks about loneliness and heartbreak. And I think part of being on a desert island, I'm going to tap into that. The second one is Al Stewart's "Year of the Cat." Year of the Cat was
Ah,
one of my favorite albums when I was in college. There's something about
yeah.
it that's romantic, escapist, soothing, all in one album. I really like that. And then finally, I
Cool.
thought if I'm going to be on a desert island, I want to be in an island vibe part of the time. So I'm going to bring Jimmy Buffett's A1A.
There you go. There
Yeah,
you go. That's the party time
yeah,
bit. Just you
yeah,
start getting a little pressed on some of the Bob Dylan,
yes,
and then yeah, you've got to
yeah,
balance it
yeah.
out.
Yeah, but
choices.
again, ask me next week. I might pick three different ones. So yeah,
That's how it goes. That's the nature of that question. That's why
yeah,
it's always tough for me when people try to turn it around and say, "Well, what would you pick, Matt?" I'm
yeah,
like, "Come on, just ask the questions. I don't want to answer
yeah,
it." Anyway, cool. I know you're going to be at Quirks next week in Dallas, right?
yeah,
All
yeah.
right, cool.
I'm excited to be
Excellent.
there.
Very exciting. So look for Bill if you're going to be at Quirks. That's awesome. I might try to squeeze in there myself. We'll see. It's getting down to the wire. But either way, Bill, it's great to sit down and have this kind of chat.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's a long time coming, so I'm glad
Yeah,
we finally
yeah.
had a chance.
Okay.
So
Well, thanks so much for having me.
yeah, maybe I'll see you next week
I hope
and
so.
rock and roll.
All right, rock on.